I'm not going to lie. The Tennessee-Alabama game had almost become unwatchable for about a 15-year period while Nick Saban was running things at Alabama. They beat Tennessee for what seemed like 100 years in a row. But, of course, that changed a couple of years ago when Josh Heupel and the VOLS got a big win over Alabama at home at night in Neyland Stadium. Last year's game was pretty good, too, down in Tuscaloosa. And the third Saturday in October is coming up this weekend, and you know what that means. It's time for another round. Alabama on the road in Knoxville to take on Nico in the Tennessee Vols. We're going to talk about that game in this video, which is sponsored by PrizePicks. PrizePicks.com are the kings of daily fantasy sports. Check out PrizePicks.com. They're really easy to use, and they have a great bonus. Just click the sign up tab in the upper right-hand corner. It's going to ask you for your email address and a promo code. For the promo code, make sure you enter Uncle Lou. That's one word, uppercase letters, without any spaces, just Uncle Lou, and they're going to give you a great bonus. You make any $5 pick, and whether you win or lose, they're going to give you a $50 bonus. Once you get signed up using that promo code, Uncle Lou, click the college football tab on the top, and it's going to show you the list of all this week's players. You simply pick more or less on 2 or more players, and you can win up to 100 times your money. It's literally that easy. Later in the video, I'm going to give you a couple of my picks involving the Alabama versus Tennessee game and some of the players involved in that one. But make sure you check them out, prizepicks.com, promo code Uncle Lou. All right, I think this is going to be a pretty good game here. Now, both teams have a good win. Alabama's got probably a little bit of a better win at home against Georgia. Tennessee has, I guess, their best wins probably on the road at Oklahoma. They destroyed NC State earlier in the season. But, of course, we've come to find out that NC State's just a terrible team. But both of these teams have struggled over the last couple of weeks, each losing as a favorite on the road to inferior teams. Alabama, of course, caught a shocking loss on the road at Vanderbilt a couple of weeks ago, 1 week after beating Georgia at home. And Tennessee on the same day, not to be outdone by the Gumps, went on the road to Arkansas and took a giant dump on their own foot, losing to the Razorbacks. Last week, both teams rebounded with a win, but both teams struggled and really did not look good. Alabama was lucky to escape a win against South Carolina at home. Same thing for Tennessee against Florida last Saturday night. Both of those teams easily could have lost those games, but doesn't matter now. They came away with the W. So each team sitting on one loss heading into this one. And we talk a lot about this in a lot of these college football games that are coming up, I think, at this point in the season, going back really to last week, over the next few weeks, I think. The 12-team playoff has changed, or should be changing, the way we think about what losses mean at certain points in the season, or how many losses you have, right? With each of these teams sitting on one loss, in a 4-team playoff, this game would basically be a playoff game because no 2-loss team ever got into the 4-team playoff. We knew a 2-loss team wasn't getting into the 4-team playoff. But, of course, now we have moved on to an expanded 12-team playoff, which is going to provide room for a lot of 2-loss teams to get in, potentially a 3-loss team, although I'm not so sure about that. So with both of these two teams sitting on one loss, this is a huge game. But it's not necessarily a postseason elimination game for either team. Now, we can pull up the schedules for each team and kind of go through it and say, well, if they take their second loss here and they still have to play this team, and this team, well, they're probably going to lose one of those, so they probably are out. Well, probably is not what we're talking about here. This will not eliminate either team from the playoff. Alabama will have an opportunity to run the table, finish 10-2, and make the playoffs. That would include wins against LSU, Oklahoma, Auburn. These are all teams they have coming up on the schedule. You look at Tennessee, they play on the road at Georgia. They close the season out, of course, with Vandy. I believe they play Kentucky. So they'll have a chance also to win out 10-2 and then potentially and likely make the playoffs. So while this is not technically a playoff elimination game, I will admit that catching a second loss at this point in the season, given what each of these teams have down the road, is going to paint the loser of this team into a corner where pretty much every game you play after that is basically a playoff game at that point, because a third loss, I don't think, will get either of these teams in. I don't think a third loss will get any team in this season. So let's take a look at this particular matchup here. Now, it's in Tennessee. It's in Knoxville. That is obviously a huge advantage for Tennessee. Not just because Tennessee has a massive home field advantage, which they do. They play better at home. The crowd will have an impact on this game. There's no doubt and no question about it, regardless of what Kalen DeBoer tries to say to the media, which, of course, you've probably heard by now. He was asked about the crowd noise at Neyland, and he said, well, I coached at Washington, so we played in some loud places too. And, he's right. He played at Oregon. The case has been made over the last few days that Oregon might be the loudest stadium in the country. I don't know. I've only been to 2 or 3 different stadiums, so I'm in no position to come on and tell anybody which stadium is less loud or more loud than another outside of the 2 or 3 that I've been to. But I understand the point he's trying to make is that he's coached in loud environments before. And of course, Tennessee fans are kind of using that as a slight towards them and like, oh, that he doesn't know what he's walking into and that kind of thing. And home field advantage is a big deal in college football, and crowd noise and sort of the intimidation factor that goes along with that is a big part of that. It can disrupt an offense. It can disrupt timing. You see false start penalties. You see delay of games. You see all sorts of things occur in a big home game that affects the opposing team, right? And you see coaches come out in post-game press conferences all the time and thank the crowd for their impact on the game and things like that. So I understand what Kalen DeBoer is saying. I mean, what do you want? He's not going to throw in the towel and go, "Oh yeah, it's going to be. We're not going to be able to do anything. It's going to be so loud there. I don't know how we'll ever get a snap off." He's not going to say that. Now, maybe he should have worded what he said a little bit differently, or maybe he shouldn't have even said anything at all because the whole bulletin board material deal or whatever that Tennessee might try to use that for. But the crowd is going to have an impact and an effect on this game. There's no such thing as a big home game that doesn't affect the visiting team some type of way, whether it's one false start, one delay a game, communication issues, the quarterback can't yell out the protections or the blitz pickups or the audibles or the play calls or whatever it is. Some tangible, some intangible effects. But so I think the idea that, well, the crowd will have no effect on the game because Kalen DeBoer coached at Oregon once, that's ridiculous. The idea that Alabama won't be able to run a play because Neyland Stadium is loud, that's also ridiculous. We all kind of understand the home field advantage thing. So that clearly is an advantage for Tennessee here. They get to sleep in their own beds. They get to play in their own stadium. They get to get dressed in their own locker room, familiar environments. The crowd will be behind them. All of the things that go along with playing at home, right? But specifically when it comes to Tennessee, there's an added benefit to playing at home for them, which is that means they're not playing on the road, where they're absolutely terrible under Josh Heupel. Not just this year, but going back to the day he got the job at Tennessee. You go back to last year, there's just a no reason at all loss on the road to Florida. Of course, this year, the no reason at all loss on the road at Arkansas. 2 years ago, Tennessee was ranked number 1 in the country after beating Alabama for the first time in forever. They then come into Athens, go on the road to Athens to play Georgia in a road game and seemingly couldn't get a first down. They have been a totally different team on the road versus at home. So it's sort of it's almost like a double benefit in Tennessee's case to play at home, because not only do you get the support of the home crowd, which hopefully, if you're a Tennessee fan, will cause some mistakes or some errors on Bama's part, but maybe even more importantly, you just don't have to play on the road, which you appear to have a really, really hard time doing. So that's an obvious benefit, I think, for Tennessee. I also think Tennessee is going to be able to run the ball in this game. Dylan Sampson has been one of, if not the best running backs in the SEC this season. And while Tennessee has had their issues offensively, no doubt about it, no question about it, and we're going to talk about some of that in a minute with Nico in the passing game and some of the struggles they've had over the last few weeks, Dylan Sampson has been a bright spot for Tennessee week in and week out this season. No doubt about it. We'll see how much success he can have against Alabama. My concern with Tennessee in terms of their running game is a concern I've expressed all season long, which is who's behind Dylan Sampson? Nobody. Now, that doesn't mean that Dylan Sampson can't have a good game, but most college football teams will rotate running backs in and out. And then, of course, you always have to worry about a potential injury or something like that. But Dylan Sampson is really, really good. Alabama also, I think, can run the ball pretty well. Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, of course, Jalen Milroe gives you the added benefit of being able to do a lot of things with his legs as well. Now, Nico has the ability to sort of scramble around and extend some plays. He seems to do it much less frequently than Jalen Milroe. maybe some of that is first year starter. Maybe some of that is, trying to protect himself. Maybe some of that is coaching and maybe asking him not to do it. I'm not sure. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Nico, he's a little thin. Let's just be real. And the SEC's a rough place to be running around when you're a quarterback. Whereas Jalen Milroe is he's built, I don't want to say like Cam Newton, but he's more of that body style, a KJ Jefferson type who was at Arkansas, now is at Central Florida. Milroe's a bigger body type that's more likely to absorb some of the hits that come with being a running quarterback, where Nico, he's a little thin. Let's just call it what it is. Defensively, I actually think Tennessee has played better defense this year than Alabama, and that just sounds really strange to say. We're so used to sort of the Alabama and Nick Saban defense that we've been seeing for years. The drop-off in defense at Alabama this year is shocking to see, just because it's been so long since we've seen an Alabama defense play at this type of a level, which is clearly a non-elite level. When you start debating Alabama's defense and how good or bad it is, it's not whether or not they're elite. No one thinks Alabama's defense is elite, including Alabama fans. It's where do they fall between the bad to average to good category. And there's been times where they've played well, right? Shut Georgia out basically in the first half. Other times they appear unable to get off the field, particularly on third downs. They have really struggled. Long drives against this Alabama defense we've seen from teams like South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Over the last couple of weeks. You have the second half of the Georgia game, and while Alabama did win that game, that defense gave up a massive, almost 30-point lead in the second half. In fact, they did give up the lead in the second half. Georgia, if you remember, took the lead in that game with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to go, whatever it was, before Ryan Williams made that spectacular play, and Alabama retook the lead and then held on to win. Even in that win, though, after the Ryan Williams touchdown, they let Georgia drive all the way down the field to where they were throwing passes into the end zone. So the defense has had their struggles this year, and it's just been strange to see. We understand that Saban's gone and DeBoer's an offensive guy, and so, you lose some pieces to the portal and graduation and all that. But, we've seen all that happen before with Alabama star defensive players going to the NFL or the portal or whatever the case. They appear to have taken a significant step back defensively. Now, can Tennessee take advantage of that? I'm not so sure. Tennessee, I think, defensively has played well. The issues with Tennessee have been on the offensive side of the ball. There's been some issues, honestly, with Alabama as well on the offensive side of the ball, but it's mostly been defense to me when I watch the Alabama games. And with Tennessee, the problems have mostly been offensive issues. So with this particular game, it's like which one of those two teams can potentially get right this week? Can Tennessee's offense kind of find the rhythm that they appeared to have early in the season? And I understand they were playing lesser competition then, but it almost seems to me now when I watch Tennessee that it's become almost a self-fulfilling prophecy with a lack of confidence. They don't have confidence in themselves offensively. So it's like they don't think it's going to work. So then it doesn't work. And then because it doesn't work, then they think it's not going to work. And because they think it's not going to work, it continues not. They need to get out of that. They're stuck in this kind of spin cycle of negativity offensively where things just aren't clicking. You watch the game and it's just obvious, and it's mostly related to the pass game. And I've heard a million different arguments and theories from Tennessee fans and analysts and whoever else about, well, it's the offensive line, or it's the timing, or it's the play calling, or it's the play caller, or whatever it is. It's this particular left tackle, or it's all that. So whatever the issues are, they're going to have to find a way to get them fixed this week. Alabama defensively, can they find a way to get off the field on third downs, which of course they've struggled to do? What about the back end of Alabama's defense, which has been picked on and taken advantage of in several games this year? Are they going to hold up against what we think will be a serious passing threat from Tennessee and Nico and that Vol offense? Alabama's listed as a 3-point favorite on the road in this one here. Before I give you my pick on the game, let me show you what I think about some individual players in this game and what I think they might be able to do in this game. All right, this may not technically be a playoff elimination game, but this is a rivalry game, and with each team already sitting on one loss, a second loss at this point in the season to either team is going to be extremely detrimental. I expect both teams to come out and sort of put forth their best effort. I don't expect them to leave any bullets in the chamber, so to speak. And that's sort of the approach I'm taking with my picks here on PrizePicks. So if we go to the search bar here, we can type in Nico, and it'll bring up all of Nico's numbers to quarterback for Tennessee here. I think Tennessee is going to throw the ball around. I think they're going to sling it. I think there's going to be a lot of deep shots in this game. I think Tennessee will connect on some of those deep shots. I'm going to take more than 199.5 passing yards for Nico. Now let's take a look at Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. Again, go to the search bar, type in Jalen Milroe. All of his numbers come up. Now, I think Bama could have some success throwing the ball as well. However, that's not where I'm going to go here with the Jalen Milroe pick. Over 40 or more than 46.5 rushing yards, more than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Now, obviously, Milroe likely not to have a receiving touchdown, but a rush touchdown, I think, is extremely likely for Milroe in this game. He's a big-bodied guy, so we could see a goal line situation where Milroe runs it in from inside the 2-yard line. We've seen Milroe with a lot of sort of almost sweep-style runs from inside the 10-yard line. And, of course, Nico is capable at any point of one of those highlight reel 40, 50, 60-yard type touchdown runs that we've seen him do before. I'm going to go more than 0.5 rushing touchdowns. So you can see here, a $25 fee would win me $56.25. That's what I'm going to go with. Submit lineup. Yes, I'm sure. And successfully submitted my lineup. So there you go. That's Uncle Lou's PrizePicks for the Bama-Tennessee game. All right, so even though I don't think this is technically an elimination game in terms of the postseason playoffs, I do feel like both teams are probably approaching this game this way. We're basically at the halfway point of the season here, and if you take a second loss now, you're really painting yourself into a corner for the remainder of the season in a scenario where you pretty much have to win out if you want to get into the postseason. So I expect both teams to sort of unload both barrels here in this game in terms of play calling and everything else. I think you're going to see Milroe running around. I wouldn't be surprised to see Nico with some designed runs here. I think you're going to see a lot of deep shots by both teams. I know the Tennessee fans have been complaining lately about the lack of downfield passing game and not just sort of airing it out. I think you will see that in this game. If for no other reason, then that's the perceived weakness of the Alabama defense, is that secondary. It can be picked on. It can be taken advantage of. We have seen teams do it week in and week out. And I do think this is one of the more talented passing attacks that Alabama will see all year. Obviously, Georgia looked really good against them in the second half. Tennessee's probably got better wide receivers than Georgia does. I think Georgia's quarterback right now is playing at a much higher level than Nico is. I don't even think that's up for debate. So maybe they've seen a better quarterback than Nico, but I don't know that they've seen a better group of wide receivers than what they'll see this week against Tennessee. So I expect both teams to take a lot of shots downfield. Both quarterbacks, I think, will be mobile and try to run the ball and pick up first downs on key third downs, keep drives alive, things like that. Bottom line for me, right now, when I look at these two quarterbacks, I trust Jalen Milroe more than I trust Nico. Nico's still a first-year starter. This is his third Saturday in October game. This is his first Georgia-Bama game. This is the biggest game of his career, period. He got his first start in the bowl game last year against Iowa, and unfortunately, no one cares about bowl games anymore. The game at Oklahoma, he played okay there. He didn't play great. You remember Tennessee scored 25 points. Now Oklahoma's got a really good defense. It's not, Nico didn't play terrible in that game. I don't want to say that he did, but he didn't look like a superstar in that game either. This will be the biggest game of his career, and if Tennessee's going to win this game, he's going to have to play like the Tennessee fans hyped him up to be. And so far, I have not seen that from Nico. Although Milroe has struggled at times this season, I have seen Milroe and the Alabama offense play at an extremely high level against an extremely talented team this year in the Georgia Bulldogs, particularly in the first half of that game. I know it's a road game, and I would not be surprised if Tennessee jumps out to a lead, maybe even has a lead at halftime. In the end, right now, with these two offenses, I just trust Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe right now more than I trust Nico and Josh Heupel. I think this will be a great game. I think it'll be a close game. I don't think it's going to be the 50-something to 49 game that a lot of people are expecting from 2 years ago. I think it's going to be a much lower scoring game than that, probably in the upper 20s, low 30s. But I think Alabama finds a way to win in the end, giving Tennessee their second loss of the season and keeping the hopes alive for Alabama. And hopes will still be alive for Tennessee, too. It's going to make their game on the road in Athens. Interesting scenario here. Tennessee could lose this game. Georgia could lose to Texas this weekend. That would be each team's second loss, with that showdown looming in November between Georgia and Tennessee. If they both get to that game with 2 losses, then that will be the first playoff game of the season. That Georgia versus Tennessee game in November would basically become the first playoff game of the season, because the loser would be out and the winner likely would be in. But I do think Alabama finds a way to win this one in the end. I'm going to go with the Tide in a close one to beat Tennessee on the road at Rocky Top. All right, I appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a good morning.